Hi, this is Roger. Thanks for dropping by. This is the continuing story of the decision-making process to winter rest or not through the Dendrobiums. So part 2 coming up now. Right, everything up there, bar 1, which I can't get at the moment, but I can get at the canes in a minute, because the canes are, even though the plants are around this side, the canes are over there. But all of these are anosmum types. There is the species anosmum, there's Nesta, that's an anosmum cross. There is primulinum, aphyllum, and all of those are proper winter resters. They spend the growing season putting out canes like this. Yeah, that one's still growing. But eventually they will stop growing. And in the main, they are annually deciduous. So although they put up a beautiful cane like that with lovely bright green leaves on, unfortunately, by the time we get to spring, those leaves will be gone. But they'll be replaced by the blooms. They are annually deciduous. And for a plant to come into that category, by default, it's going to need the winter rest. Yeah? It dumps those leaves in the winter because of the harsh times, and it can't support them. Yeah, so they're easy. So we'll get those out of the way now. I'm not getting them all down. They're all treated en masse. Yeah, that's how they get treated. And then we'll have a look at some of the exceptions up here. Now this is one of the exceptions. This is Dendrobium friedericksianum, I think. I finally found one with no tag. I'll get the tag done. This is a winter rester. I've had it, this will be its second winter with me, I think. Possibly third. Maybe, I can't remember. But we'll have that info in my notes. But nonetheless, this got rested properly last winter and I had a lot of blooms on it. But because I've had it long enough to know now, it's these older canes that bloomed. You can see all the spikes still on there. These canes are now totally deciduous, and they seem to do that over a 2-year period on this particular plant. So these are last year's growths, obviously finished growing some time ago. They're probably going to drop their leaves through the winter, and those will be the canes where most of the blooms will be produced. These canes up here are this year's growths, and they're still at it. Yeah, every single one of these canes is still growing. So I've still got to carry on watering and feeding this for a while, but I suspect now the temperatures are starting to drop at night, it's going to trigger the slowing down process and the terminal leaf production on these canes. This one's already done it. Yeah, that's the terminal leaf there. Whereas the others are still growing. Actually, that's a terminal leaf as well. That's not. It's got a new one coming. And that may be. That's still growing. That's still growing. Yeah. So there's a mix on here. Older canes that finished growing this time last year. Yeah. This year's growths, some of which are still pushing on. They're still lengthening. They're still extending. I don't want to stall that process. I'd like the plant to do it off its own back and not force it into that point. So I can carry on feeding a bit with this one and watering on a regular basis until I see signs of it slowing down, which will probably be the temperature. Talking of the temperature, boy, are we in for some this weekend. The weather forecast have used the S word. Yeah, up north in Scotland they're going to get some snow. And we've basically got a northerly airflow, we've got an Arctic blast coming down towards next weekend. We're going to get frosts, and we're going to get cold daytime temperatures below 10 degrees C. That's daytime. And nighttime we're going to be down around freezing. So whether I like it or not, the cold is on its way. That will have quite a marked effect in here, I suspect. It's the it depends whether the sun comes out, because even on a cold day, if the sun comes out, it'll still raise the temperature in here. But like today, it's a cloudy day and it's cold outside. So, you know, I'm at 21 degrees in here. It's probably not going to get much warmer than that today. whereas yesterday I was up to 26, I think. So, yep, the cooler days and the drop at night time is what's going to trigger some of the growths on these, or stop the growths on some of these plants. Now, I'm not getting this one out because I'm not watering this shelf today, but that's up the back there is Dendrobium chrysotoxin. It's a new acquisition. It hasn't spent a winter with me. I got this in spring, in bloom in fact. It has grown quite a few new canes this year, but the older canes that were there when I got it are showing no signs of any yellowing. Yeah, so that's not annually deciduous. That's going to hold its leaves for several years. So that's just going to come into the category of drier in winter, but not a full winter rest. Now, I haven't looked that one up yet, and I will do just to confirm that statement. But that statement is just based on the look of the plant. Yeah? It's not annually deciduous. That's blatantly obvious, because these canes are at least 2 years old. Yeah? They were mature canes when I got it in the spring. So they could have been the new growths from the previous year. So they're coming up to 2 years old, and I've got new canes. Yeah? Which are still growing. So for the time being, I'm still going to carry on feeding and watering that to mature those latest growths, and it will get the drop in temperature, it will get the brighter light, but I'm not withholding water. It's not that type of Dendrobium. I can tell by looking at it, but I will look that one up because I really want that to bloom. So that's an odd one. It's a new plant for me, a little bit of work to do. But I can pretty safely say it doesn't need a full winter rest. Right, again, I'm not getting them out, but I've only actually got one large true nobly hybrid left now, which is my prima donna, because that was split. And as you can see, it's still maturing its canes. Yeah, so that's in active growth. So irrespective of whether I lose the opportunity for the blooms on that one, I'm going to continue growing that this winter. It's had a major disturbance, a repot and a split. Yeah. So this year, I just keep that one going. The one next to it is Wedding Bells, and that's a summer bloomer. So the blooms are not triggered by the winter rest. And at the moment, that plant exhausted itself. It bloomed its little head off so well in the summer it went to Malvern, and then it sat in a marquee at ridiculous temperatures, very little humidity, and it's taken the strength out of the plant. So I'm desperately just trying to keep that one ticking over now. But that's going to take a while to recover. That shouldn't have gone to the show, but that's what you do if you're in an orchid society. But at the moment that's effectively ruined that plant. So it's probably going to take a year now to get back to actively growing nicely again. But in the past, when I've had mature nobly hybrids, they never got a formal rest. What they got was the reduced feed down to next to nothing, because the canes were mature as they went into the winter, but enough water to keep them ticking over and stop them actually desiccating. But what they did get is the increase in light and the drop in temperature. And quite honestly, with the hybrids, I don't think they need a full winter rest. I don't think you need to go to those extremes with the hybrids. If you've got Dendrobium nobile, the species, and like Highlander, there can be only one. If you've got that, then you will need to rest that. You will need to give it the full treatment, or it just won't bloom. Apparently that's a really difficult one to get to bloom well, the actual species. But the hybrids have had all that fussiness knocked out of them, quite honestly. The work that the Yamamoto guy and the hybridization program that was done has knocked a lot of that fussiness out. And noblies nowadays, the hybrids, can seem to pop up blooms almost any time of year. And they certainly don't need the full winter rest to get them to bloom. So those are your decisions, but that's how I've always treated mine. And I've got some show winners, or had, not anymore because they've been split up. But yeah, I mean, my prima donna got best hybrid in show back in the spring, you know. So I do grow them pretty well, although not at the moment because of their disturbance. I'm now in a position where I need to grow them on and get them back to specimen-sized plants, which is a bit of a challenge. But, you know, they've done well for me over the years. Now I've got to do some work to get them back to that level again. Right, this Dendrobium has no tag, and I haven't got a clue what it is, but I can find out. And I will do so, and I will do the tag, but I'm not stopping filming to do it now. All I'm going to do is not put that back up where it lives. I'm just going to leave it here in the way, so that I'll definitely get on and do the tag. But irrespective of whether I know what it is fully deciduous, but I don't know how long it takes to become fully deciduous because I haven't had it long enough. This came out of the big box in late winter, so this is its first winter with me. But just on observations, it's pushed out loads of new growths this year and a good root system. I am over the moon with its recovery, but it's still in active growth. So I'm certainly not withholding food or water on that plant. Irrespective of whether it needs a rest or not, it's not getting one this year. If it wants to grow, I'm going to let it. And I'll worry about getting some blooms next year. But I'll let you into a little secret. If I can get this up in the air somewhere where I can film it. Where can I put that down? Oh, I can hold it in my hand. Now I don't know whether you can see that or not, but if you look at the cane that's running along the shelf, not the ones that are going across the edge of the shelf, the one that's running along it, that's got buds. That's a little flower spike starting. And looking at the cane they're starting on, there's swellings at other points. So whatever it is, it's going to bloom. It's a strange time of year to be doing it, but I don't even know what it's called at the moment, so maybe it's not a strange time of year. Maybe that's what it does. But if it can do it on that cane, I see no reason why some of those other canes might do the same thing. So we'll watch with interest, but that is a little cluster of buds. And if you look back up the cane, you can see some paler green colours on the leaf nodes. And that may well be more buds to come. Woohoo! That wasn't there last time I looked. But anyway, it's not getting rested. That's the plant, irrespective of whether it's going to bloom or not. And I'll do a pop-up. For any plants that haven't got tags that I don't know what they are, I'll do pop-ups for. In fact, I think on this video I'm going to do a pop-up for every single plant. That way you've got the reference point to the plant name at the point in the video I'm talking about it. That makes sense? Yeah, of course it does. I don't always make sense, but sometimes I do. And this Dendrobium is a lost cause, sort of. I know what this one is. Came out of the big box, didn't look very good. It looks a flipping sight worse now. It had kikis growing, those have all died. Yeah. So what I'm left with is desiccated, in effect, dead canes. So to all intents and purposes, the plant is lost. But its last little bit of hope is that tiny little new growth, which is just starting to grow some roots. So I may be able to save it. But irrespective of what that's called, and I've got a feeling this is the odd one. This is a rock grower in its natural environment, and I believe from memory, I can't remember what its name is, begins with L. I'll do a pop-up. But if it's the one I'm thinking of, and I'm pretty sure it is, it's a rock grower and it grows on limestone outcrops. Well, trying to look after a plant like that, you're onto a loser. It's just not an ideal plant to try and keep because of where it grows. Yeah, I mean, you could sort of say, well, I could add lots of dolomite lime to keep it happy. Well, that's difficult to do on a mount, and that may well have grown better in a pot. But nonetheless, it's not actually dead, although it flipping well looks like it. And it's gone downhill a lot since I got it. That short cane to the right was actually a lot plumper than that. But the roots on it are not working. It's not hydrating very well. And it hasn't grown any new roots, and it hasn't put out any new growth until it started that little one. Now that new growth can still fail, and if it does, the plant will be lost. But you know, obviously can't rest that. I've got to try and keep that little new growth going if I can. But yeah, if that is the one I'm thinking of that grows on rocky limestone outcrops, it's always going to be difficult, always. But I'll see what I can do. If I can get that little new growth to push on, maybe I can work with it next year, you know. But at the moment, keeping it alive is a bit of an effort. And this is another one that came out of the big box in a bit of a state, shall we say. It looked like it had suffered quite badly with cold damage. But nonetheless, this ridiculously long cane has actually extended this year and is still growing. So whereas I thought that cane was just going to desiccate and die off, it didn't. Carried on growing. It had 2 kikis on it, which I took off, planted those at the base. Both of those are still growing. Yeah. And since then, halfway through the year, it pushed out this new growth. Yeah. Which is still growing. So even though I don't know what this one's called at the moment, it's got no tag, I don't care what it's called, I don't care where it comes from, it's growing, no rest for you. Simple as that. And if such a time as it proves its strength next year, by the end of next year, whether it gets rested or not will be a much more important decision, but it's certainly not getting rested this year. Okay, now this is Dendrobium glomeratum, and it's a deceiver, and it caught me out last year. Yeah, it has one ridiculously long cane that hasn't long finished growing. Yeah, and it pushed out this cane, yeah, towards the end of last year. And I took a look at it and I thought, yeah, this drops its leaves after quite a short period of time. It's probably going to drop these leaves soon. It's a deciduous type dendrobium, lots of leafless canes, needs a winter rest. 100% wrong. So as a consequence, that cane stopped growing and this cane slowed up. Luckily it didn't stop. So during this year, it's picked up again and carried on growing, and at the moment it's now producing yet another couple of new growths, yeah, at a strange time of year. Okay, look this one up. There is no mention of a winter rest, so despite its appearance, it's effectively a continuous grower, and I treated it totally wrong last winter. So this year it will get watered and fed. I will push that new growth on and allow that cane to extend. It's also mainly a summer bloomer, so maybe next year we'll get some blooms on that great big long cane down there, because that cane hasn't bloomed yet. In fact, this hasn't bloomed for a hell of a long time. Reason? It's probably been being treated wrong. Yeah, this is a high humidity jobby, this one. And it carries on growing year round, but it doesn't look like it. It really doesn't look like it. It's certainly fooled me. But I've just looked it up now, and it's effectively, by definition, a continuous grower. So we will do that this winter and keep that new growth going, keep that cane growing, and maybe on a maturer, stronger plant, it'll find enough in it to be able to push some blooms out next year. Although this isn't a bloom video, I will put the bloom pop-up for this plant up, and you'll see why it's worth the effort. I think it's the only other dendrobium I've got that rivals the colour of Hibiki, that you judge for yourself. But I treated it wrong last year. We'll try and put it right this year. See where we go from there. Oh, that really does look like the normal deciduous type, which by definition means it comes from deciduous forest and it should be rested. But it just doesn't. Still, there we go. Can't get them right all the time, can we? Right, although I'm not actually looking at the plant at the moment, I'm looking at the tail end of the plant, the lower part of the plant. And, you know, you have to make these decisions. Is that yet another kiki? Because it does produce them. Or is that a spike? What are these bits down here? Yeah, difficult to tell, and I haven't had it long enough. You've heard me talk about the big box. This is the reason there was a big box. It was to get this thing in. And irrespective of whether that needs a winter rest or not, this is its first winter with me, and with that number of new growths on the top of the plant, there's no way it's getting rested. There's 30 odd new growths up there, and they're all in active growth, and they've got to be able to grow that long. Yeah? So that's Dendrobium chryseum, I think. The pop-up will correct me if I'm wrong. I know it hasn't got a tag, and I'm not getting it down today. It's right up the back. I've already had to move quite a few plants. And that'll be the last one. And I'd love to know what that is. You can discover with me. Is that the biggest mealybug you have ever seen in the world? Good God. Sorry. Ex-mealybug. I don't think I've ever seen one that big before, you little tyke. Do you know, that almost looked like a slug, it was so big. Anyway, it has ceased to be. If I hadn't nailed it to the perch, it would have fallen off a long time ago. You work that one out yourself. Okay, that's it. Those are the Dendrobiums, basically, that need consideration. And the decisions I've done with them. I can now set myself up a mental list of the ones that I know are going to be properly rested, and those that I need to grow on through the winter, and the last list of those that I just want to keep ticking over. Yeah, so that's done it now, and I hope this is sort of helpful to some people. I know there must be a lot of people watching that don't even own a Dendrobium, but there's some logic in the observations of the plants and looking at the canes and what the growth's doing, you know, as we head into winter. So hopefully it's useful, well, quite useful for some, of some use to others, and there's going to be some that it's of no use at all to. But I've got a variety of orchids. I've got more Dendrobiums probably than any other genus. They are my favourites, so they're obviously going to take the limelight, basically. So anyway, and I'll see you next time. Any questions about any of these plants or ones you've got, I'm quite happy. I'll even look plants up for you, although I do stand back sometimes and think you could look this up yourself, Sunshine. But some people don't necessarily have those search mechanisms available to them and in their head. And you get better at searching for information about plants the more you do it. But, you know, give us a plant name. If you want me to look it up, I will, and see what I come up with. But, yeah, I'll see you next time. Here endeth the Dendrobium decision-making process. Now all I've got to do is allow the autumn to go into winter, which I have no control over, and adjust things accordingly. As I say, I don't use the calendar. There is no date on my calendar with a circle round it that says, do this for your Dendrobiums. It's weather dependent, and it is adjustable each year, depending on what the weather's up to. We've had so much really bright sunshine lately. Daytime temperatures really high in here, and with the lights, extended day lengths as well. So in theory, things shouldn't stop growing yet. But they are getting the cold nights now, and very soon I'm going to have to get the heater out and stop the nights dropping down too much. So and we're not far off that. That might even have to happen this weekend. I'll see how I go. But there we go, Dendrobium decision making time. All done now. I'll see you next time.